Welcome to Global Trends. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. The once stable economic relationship between the US and Canada has been rocked to its core, sending shockwaves through both nations. For decades, the border between these two countries has been a symbol of cooperation and mutual benefit, especially when it comes to the lumber trade. But now, that partnership is facing its greatest test yet. Canada has abruptly halted all softwood lumber exports to the United States, a move that few saw coming and even fewer were prepared for. The flow of timber, once so reliable, has come to a sudden and grinding halt. This immediate decision freezes a multi-billion-dollar trade artery, leaving the American construction industry scrambling for alternatives. Projects are paused, workers are left idle, and uncertainty hangs heavy over job sites across the country. Canadian lumber has long been the backbone of U.S. home building, accounting for nearly 30% of all softwood lumber consumed in the States. From suburban developments to city skyscrapers, Canadian timber has shaped the American landscape for generations. Overnight, that supply is gone, sending shockwaves through supply chains and inflating costs. Hardware stores are running low, contractors are facing impossible choices, and families hoping to build or renovate are suddenly facing soaring expenses. At border crossings, trucks are turned away, and U.S. builders are left with dwindling inventories and skyrocketing futures prices. The uncertainty is driving panic in the markets, with investors and industry leaders alike bracing for the fallout. The move is the climax of a bitter, decades-long trade dispute, with both sides blaming each other for unfair practices. Negotiations have repeatedly stalled, and now, frustration has boiled over into outright confrontation. Canadian officials say escalating U.S. protectionism left them no choice. American producers claim the Canadian system is fundamentally unfair. Each side insists it is defending its workers and industries, but the cost of this standoff is mounting by the day. This halt marks a breaking point, transforming a chronic trade irritant into a full-blown economic crisis. The ripple effects are being felt far beyond the lumber yards, threatening jobs, investments, and the broader economy. The question now, how long will this last, and at what cost to both nations? As leaders search for a solution, millions on both sides of the border are left waiting, hoping for a resolution before the damage becomes irreversible. At the heart of the crisis is a dispute over how Canada manages its timber. The U.S. Lumber Coalition claims Canadian producers get unfair subsidies through low stumpage rates on public land, undercutting American mills. In response, the U.S. has repeatedly imposed tariffs, most recently, a dramatic hike to over 34%, with some companies facing nearly 45%. The Trump administration's aggressive tariff threats have only deepened uncertainty, despite the USMCA's intent to stabilize trade. For Canada, forestry is vital. Over 200,000 jobs and billions in exports are at stake, most of it to the U.S. The export halt is a desperate gambit to force a resolution after years of what Canada sees as unfair penalties. The sudden loss of Canadian lumber has sent the U.S. housing market into turmoil. With up to 30% of supply gone, prices for basic materials like 2x4s are soaring, worsening the housing affordability crisis. Even before the halt, tariffs were adding thousands to the cost of a new home. Now, that number is set to climb even higher. U.S. sawmills can't fill the gap. Capacity and workforce shortages mean it could take years to catch up. Imports from Europe and Brazil are a drop in the bucket compared to what Canada supplied. Builders face not just higher prices but outright shortages, threatening jobs and slowing construction nationwide. The U.S. must now contend with a severe, long-term shortage of a critical building material. The ripple effects will be felt by families, workers, and the broader economy. Beyond the numbers, the human cost is staggering. Behind every statistic are real people, families, workers, and entire communities whose lives are being upended by the ongoing trade dispute. In Canada, entire communities built around forestry are reeling from layoffs as mills shut down and exports dry up. Once bustling towns now face uncertainty, with local businesses shuttering and schools losing students as families are forced to move away in search of work. Families face the loss of livelihoods and the collapse of local economies. The ripple effects are felt everywhere, from grocery stores to playgrounds, leaving a sense of loss and anxiety in their wake. In the U.S., it's consumers and construction workers who suffer most. The dream of home ownership slips further away for many, while those in the building trades see fewer opportunities and shrinking paychecks. Soaring lumber prices push home ownership further out of reach for millions. First-time buyers are sidelined, and families hoping to upgrade or build are forced to put plans on hold. Construction slows, threatening jobs for carpenters, electricians, and other skilled trades. Projects stall and workers face layoffs or reduced hours, deepening the sense of instability. Even small contractors and DIYers struggle to find affordable materials. Renovations and repairs become more expensive, and some projects are abandoned altogether. The trade war, meant to protect U.S. producers, is hurting a much larger group, American families and workers. Instead of relief, many are left with mounting frustration and financial strain. The pain is real on both sides of the border. Workers in both nations share the same fears: lost jobs, uncertain futures, and the struggle to provide for their loved ones. The longer the standoff continues, the deeper the damage to communities and industries. Recovery will take years, and some places may never fully bounce back. Ordinary people are paying the price for a political and economic standoff, caught in the crossfire, waiting for solutions that seem just out of reach. Anticipating trade turmoil, major Canadian lumber firms have invested billions in U.S. sawmills, especially in the South. By producing lumber on American soil, they sidestep tariffs and sell freely in the U.S. market. Canadian-owned companies now control up to 40% of southern U.S. softwood production. Ironically, the tariffs meant to protect American mills have made Canadian firms major players in the U.S. industry. Profits flow back to Canada even as Canadian mills sit idle and workers lose jobs. The export halt will only accelerate this shift, as companies ramp up U.S. production to meet demand. This strategy ensures corporate survival, but deepens the hollowing out of Canada's own forestry sector. The lines between domestic and foreign lumber have never been more blurred. With both economies under strain, leaders in Washington and Ottawa are scrambling for solutions. High-level talks have resumed, with Canada offering to lift some retaliatory tariffs as a gesture of goodwill. The immediate goal, a short-term fix to get Canadian lumber moving south and stabilize U.S. markets. But the core issues, subsidies, tariffs, and market access, remain unresolved. Past agreements like the 2006 Softwood Lumber Agreement brought only temporary relief and mixed results for consumers and producers. The current political climate, with legal battles over tariffs and trade policy, makes a lasting solution elusive. Both sides face pressure to compromise, but the path forward is fraught with uncertainty. The future of North American lumber trade hangs in the balance. The ongoing lumber standoff is a stark reminder of just how deeply the economies of the U.S. and Canada are intertwined. What happens on one side of the border inevitably ripples across to the other, affecting communities, businesses, and families in ways that are impossible to ignore. Neither side can truly win this dispute without inflicting harm on itself. Canadian communities face economic devastation as mills close and jobs disappear, leaving entire towns struggling to survive. Meanwhile, U.S. builders and families are hit hard by lumber shortages and skyrocketing prices, making it harder to build homes and keep construction projects on track. The reality is clear: the U.S. cannot meet its massive construction needs without a steady supply of Canadian lumber. Domestic production simply isn't enough to fill the gap. Attempts to source lumber from other countries have proven costly and unreliable, with quality often falling short of what's needed. For Canada, relying so heavily on the U.S. market exposes a major vulnerability. When trade slows, entire regions feel the pain. Shifting production south or seeking quick fixes doesn't help Canadian workers at home who depend on a healthy, stable industry. Both nations must rethink their strategies. Canada by working to diversify its export markets and reduce its dependence on a single partner, and the U.S. by recognizing the limits of protectionism. Real, lasting solutions require cooperation, not confrontation or isolation. Punitive tariffs and trade blockades have failed to resolve the core issues. Instead, they've deepened the divide and prolonged uncertainty. Only through honest negotiation, compromise, and a willingness to find common ground can both countries restore stability to this vital trade relationship. The sight of empty rail cars and silent sawmills stands as a stark warning. The current approach is unsustainable, and the costs of inaction are mounting with each passing day. For the sake of workers, families, and entire industries on both sides of the border, a new path forward is urgently needed. Leaders must come together to rebuild a stable, predictable partnership, one that benefits everyone, not just a select few. The future of both nations, and the livelihoods of millions, depends on their ability to cooperate and find common ground.